Hello there, and welcome to episode 1 of Indieview. In this series, I'll be interviewing indie developers about their upcoming games. Today, I'm talking to Rob from Dinosaur Bytes about his 3D platformer, Clive N Wrench. Rob, it's great to have you here. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here, and I'm not so bad. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad you're doing well. Thank you for joining me. So, can you tell me a little bit about Clive N Wrench?
Sure. So, Clive N Wrench is a buddy 3D platformer adventure. A rabbit and his backpack hanging monkey as they travel through time and space to try and stop an evil doctor from taking over the world. In a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty spectacular 3D platformer from what I've played. I mean, the people watching will be able to see gameplay as this interview goes on. You've really managed to capture the feel of classic 3D platformers. So what inspired you to develop this game?
I think that early on, we were in a position where there weren't really any 3D platformers, and I'm talking 2011. There hadn't been new 3D platformers for a long time, so the original inspiration was I really miss games like Spyro, Jak and Daxter, that kind of thing, and nobody's making them. And I'd complained about it, and people like no AAA studios, and there were few indies at the time. So I decided I'll teach myself to make games and start with the easiest game possible, which is a giant 3D platformer.
And you said you played stuff like Spyro and Jak and Daxter and whatnot. I presume you grew up on these games. What other games did you grow up with?
Stuff like, well, more obscurely, Muppet Monster Adventure, which is probably the biggest inspiration behind this game. But then stuff like Medieval, or like further on into PS2, stuff like the GTA trilogy or Ratchet and Clank, even Tony Hawk games, which I guess creep a little bit in because of all of their collecting and whatnot.
Had you always wanted to make games at a young age, or did this just come about, like you say, when you were craving a new 3D platformer?
It was always my go-to answer as a kid. Like, people would say, what do you want to do when you're older? And I'd always say game developer, but I don't think I ever thought it was possible. I guess because indie wasn't a thing at the time. But it's the only thing I've ever really wanted to do.
So how does Clive N Wrench stand out from other 3D platformers?
I guess the answer to that is a bit of a paradox. Because it stands out from its contemporaries because it's specifically trying to feel like a PS2 platformer, if that makes sense. So my game plan for the longest time has been to try and make a game that feels authentic to that time in games, because that's my favourite era. So it's an effort to make a game that if you didn't tell anyone, they'd go, oh yeah, I could buy that as a PS2 game. Within
the game, what are you most proud of? And I mean, there's a lot to be proud of from what I've played. It's so fun. But if there's a thing to pinpoint.
Well, firstly, thank you. I guess probably the character animation and the way that it feeds into gameplay, because for me, the feeling of a 3D platformer to move around in is the most important part. Even if you were in an empty space, if controlling the character is fun, I think that's a big, important part of it. So the fact that I'd like to hope that I've got somewhere in that ballpark is probably the thing I'm most proud of.
Has the game changed quite a bit from what you originally set out to create?
Yeah, definitely. I think partially because I didn't know what I was doing 10 years ago. And so everything looked like amateur N64 models. But also because the scope got bigger and more intricate as things went on. It started out as quite a simple project and has evolved into something that's probably way bigger than it ever should have been.
You set up a Patreon to help fund the game, and you've been giving out alpha and beta builds to backers who I presume have been providing helpful feedback along the way. How much has this changed the game?
Quite a lot, actually. Probably more than I expected. I didn't know what to expect when I set up the Patreon in the first place. But from like big sweeping changes, ideas that people have given, or suggestions, or even just small details that people have pointed out or requested. For example, there was a small speedrunning community that started filming, and they requested a few features along the way, like they wanted a timer that would like count in-game seconds, but only count in gameplay, not in cutscenes, which got implemented, and stuff like the ability to skip every cutscene. I probably wouldn't have thought to do that if somebody hadn't suggested it, and that pretty much goes across the board throughout the game. There's all kinds of things that, just because I wouldn't necessarily use it or think of it initially, doesn't mean that other people wouldn't appreciate it, so it's been a massive help.
I mean, have you been speedrunning the game yourself? Because there's such a diverse move set, and it really focuses on speed a lot of the time. Have you tried?
I've never tried speedrunning it from beginning to end or anything, because of the amount of hours that I test everything as I'm putting it all together, and because I'm, for the majority of the time, the solo developer of it. Like, every time a new thing goes in, I'm immediately the same person testing it as who put it in. So I've gotten quite fast at the game. I imagine I could speedrun it if I wasn't tired just looking at it.
Yeah, fair enough. Were the characters of Clive N Wrench any different back in the early stages? Like, in the museum, there's like early Clives. I didn't know if that was just like a little joke or if that was actually earlier versions that you made.
Oh yes, okay. I'm glad you spotted that, because yeah, those are actually that's all of the evolution stages of Clive's model in the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice Easter egg for that, because there have been a few people that have followed it right from that like early point. And so yeah, the characters have changed a lot, both personality-wise, but mainly in their models. And the reason that only Clive is represented there is because Wrench didn't appear until much later. Clive originally had a backpack which had a jetpack on it, and he had a glove that he could shoot fireballs with. And then eventually I came to the conclusion that maybe it made more sense for him to have a friend rather than all of these like random attachments.
Still speaking about the museum, there are wonderful collaborations with indies. So there are Billy Bust-Up portraits in the museum. Trouser from Ukulele shows up in a level. There's probably more I didn't discover or didn't recognise along the way. Can we expect more throughout the game?
Yeah, there are quite a few. There's like a small community of 3D platformer indie devs that has formed over the years. I don't know if you saw the Hub World a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of the people from their games crop up in a few places. There's like, for example, a painting from Zera, and another one from Bradventure that appear in the Hub World if you're keeping your eyes peeled. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the attention to details in all the levels. There's lots of really cool Easter eggs and references, and some which I think are fairly obscure. I'm gonna list my favourite, and I don't think this is really a spoiler. So Cajun Mud Bog, there's like you collect the piece, and it says at least there's not a kite to fight at the top of the tree, and that is a reference, if I'm not mistaken, to Toy Story 2, the video game, which is very obscure. I love that.
Yes, that is
cool.
Yep,
good.
Tons of stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it. There's also the whole game is filled with just jokes and puns all over the board. I love it. Do you have a favourite Greybox 2 game by any chance?
I think I like Jeff and Dexter, because it's a really dull name.
Yeah,
And nobody would buy a game called Jeff and Dexter, and that's exactly why I've wanted it there.
yeah, no, it is pretty good. I did just like spend a while just looking at all the boxes for any of them, whether it was the PS2, PS1, or like the DVDs and all the stuff like that. Because just like this is brilliant. Like, it's so dumb and I love it.
It's like it's the perfect showcase of how weird my brain is. That's just how my head works. It's just like stuff, and like you said with those VHS boxes, I don't know why I did, but I spent the time writing out like paragraphs of blurb on the back that I'm sure nobody will ever take the time to read. But if you look at it, it was actually mainly just jokes,
Right.
or like on the back of I'm trying to think. There's a back of a bean can where one of the employees has written that he's been kidnapped and forced to write bean can labels, that kind of thing.
Yes, I do remember seeing the parody of Heinz. I also liked Knees and Toes shampoo.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So simple, but so brilliant.
I'm glad you picked up on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably loads I missed. But I think it's a lot of them might be more UK orientated. So there's to the audience outside of the UK, they're going to be like, "Oh, this is a good joke," not realizing that it's like specifically a reference or whatever.
But I have to admit, there was a little bit of spitefulness in that, because like so many games have like American pop culture references
yeah.
in them, and so I've sort of gone out of my way to make it as British as possible, because it's kind of like, no, I want to represent like the weird stuff that we do, because we're just as weird as they are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like it doesn't detract in any way. Like you either get the reference or you don't, and if you don't get it, like it's still a brilliant little piece of the level that you just get to admire, or don't, because some people just move past it and don't and notice that kind of thing. But I mean, it's however people want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm aware this is like choosing your favorite child. I'm very sorry, but do you have a favorite level?
I think Emperor's Tombs, which is the Egyptian one.
Yes, I loved that.
And the reason is because like a lot of the levels are kind of split into sections, and I feel like that's the best example of like you start off in a big wide open space with a bunch of stuff to do and like freedom of direction, and then you end up in the tomb itself, which is a lot more linear and a lot more platform focused. And then there's even like small puzzles and stuff. I feel like it's the best example of like all of the strengths of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that vertical climb. So fun to do it. Because when I was playing, I was just like, I'm just gonna try and climb this thing as fast as possible and see how it goes. If I fall life will also be it, but I just want to see like how easy it is to climb this thing with at speed. And it was just so fun. Like it's so good to play.
And did you managed to take some shortcuts and skip over bits then?
Yes, a tiny bit. Like I for the majority, I did collect all the pieces, but I was just like, yeah, no, I skipped one or two things. Just like, okay, that's amazing, but that works, and like, yeah, it's just so fun. And I don't know if maybe you'll agree, maybe this was intentional, maybe you weren't, I don't know, but something about the level design, particularly in that level, in how things lead into the next scene and loop around seamlessly, really reminded me of Bugs and Taz Time Busters. Specifically Bugs and Taz Time Busters. I don't know why, but as soon as I exited the pyramid, or the tomb again, I was just like, oh, that's Bugs and Taz. But I don't really know why.
I don't know exactly why that would be. I can tell you that one of the big inspirations for that level, although I know that it's different, was the Aztec era from Time Busters. So that bleeding through doesn't surprise me, although I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure why either, but that's interesting.
I could not tell you why, but it was I just felt such a wave of nostalgia playing that level. It was great.
But if I can elicit that response for any reason with the game, then I think I've done my job right. That's all I want out of it, really.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, like as you play the game, you really feel that it captures the classic old school 3D platformer that you like people really crave. Well, I'm assuming it was pretty hard to get that right.
Yeah, I mean, I will take your word for it, and I'm very pleased to hear it. But I guess because I've worked on it for so long in like a solo capacity, it's really difficult for me to know for sure whether that feeling comes through just for me or whether that comes through for everyone else. So yes, I would say it's hard to do because I don't even know
Right.
if I've done it, and if I have, how I did that.
I mean, you've captured a mishmash of all the greats. So like, it's got the triple jump and the backwards jump of stuff like of Mario, and it's got the glide or the hover or whatever of Spyro or Ratchet and Clank, and you've got various attacks that feel like Jak and Daxter, and you got like it just combines all these great 3D platformers into one, and they all actually, like, you'd think that so many different mechanics would kind of cancel the other out a little bit, but no, they all just blend perfectly. It's so fun to play because of it. And I also really appreciate that you've just got a run function that I did not discover until like 10 minutes into playing. I was just long jumping. I was just like, oh, I can just hold this. Oh, that's great. Like, it's very satisfying to just run everywhere, and then you can go anywhere. It's great.
I think it kind of started off with a really small moveset, and then it ballooned to like a ridiculous amount of stuff you could do, and then I've slowly whittled it down to what you have now. So it's kind of, I guess, I started with a shotgun approach, and eventually it's kind of, now it's at a stage where I think everything is balanced, so that's cool. But yeah, the sprint is super helpful if you ever, because there's quite large, I don't want to say large distances of space, but there's quite a lot of areas where you want to be able to get across it fast because you're crossing back over somewhere you've been before you don't need to explore. And so I think that comes in super handy to just know that you can do that quick.
And yeah, and I like that, like you say, there are things that are far away in the level design, and actually, like in any other game, you'd be like, I can't reach that. And in this game, like, it doesn't look like I can, but I'm positive I can, and then you can, and it's awesome. And so I mean, I have to ask, the Easter eggs, the literal Easter eggs, do they do anything, or are they just there?
So the literal Easter eggs, they don't do anything specific, right. But there is one in every level.
Yeah.
So the challenge is just to do that. But however, there are other less literal Easter eggs that can trigger things.
Okay. I found the literal Easter egg in the orientation, because I thought that was where I had to go. I was just like, oh, sweet, okay, great. Nice.
Oh, yeah. But then in a certain respect, that's kind of deliberate in that I'm trying to teach people to look for secret areas.
Yeah. So
that worked.
It absolutely worked beautifully. I found that I actually didn't see the proper path straight away, because I just went there. I was like, oh, there's a thing here.
I just my dog, which is a great thing as well.
Yes, I did. Yes, the orientation level is great as well. It really does teach you very efficiently how to play. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And
it's mainly optional as well, which was quite important to me.
Yeah, of course. Like I mean, there are some collectibles in there, but
yeah, you can blast through it. You don't get stopped, because I always found with those games where they would give you a tutorial, but you would walk into a trigger and it would stop you and put you in a cutscene and you couldn't skip it. I always felt that was annoying for replays, so I wanted to make sure that everything was doable without having to stop. That even works with NPCs as well. Like in Cajun Mobbog, there's a character you talk to and he tells you about smashing tomato stands, but you don't actually have to talk to him. You can smash all those stands first and he'll give you the reward without any of that. So if you were playing for a second time or speedrunning or whatever, there's no barrier.
Yeah, I noticed that. What have been the biggest challenges in making the game? I mean, you've already listed some.
I guess the biggest challenge has been, because it's been a learning process for me, it's figuring out when to say that something's done and move on, rather than see something and go, I could do that better now, and want to iterate on it. So I guess that's probably the biggest like literal challenge. But then on a broader sense, I guess it's been because I got a lot of negative feedback early on, because the game didn't look very good. It didn't play particularly well early on, so there were a lot of detractors. So I guess that's also been quite a big challenge, was believing in the idea was good enough that I could make it how I want it to be in my head, and not get downtrodden by people saying you should give up and make something more simple.
Yeah, that's understandable. So, I mean, a little bit into the future, but what are your plans once the game is out? I would hope take a break. You've been working on very hard on this for a while.
I would sensibly, I would say yes, I'll take a break, but unfortunately, because of the way that my head works, breaks aren't really something that compute. So I probably would sleep, because that's a thing, and then start working on whatever's next. Or if Clive doesn't sell any copies, find a real job, because I won't be able to pay bills anymore.
Yeah, I really hope that it does, because you've created something incredible here. I mean, you say if what's coming next. Do you have ideas for the future already, or are you just sort of?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have plans that are quite extensive.
Excellent.
In fact, in the game itself, there are quite a few clues to what those plans might be if you look hard enough.
Oh, fascinating.
It's kind of like built with sequels in mind. So the idea being that if I ever get to make a sequel or a spin-off or whatever, you would be able to go back to the first game and you would go, oh, that's what they were talking about. So it might never come to anything and nobody will know what any of that means. One day, maybe it will make sense.
Well, I hope so, because, yeah, as I say, it is such a fun game. I've really enjoyed playing it. You captured the magic of something that at the time when you started making it was dormant for a while, and not unfortunately, because it's wonderful there were so many 3D platformers again, but yeah, there are a lot more 3D platformers, so it doesn't really fill a void anymore, but it's still an absolutely wonderful game to play, and I can't wait for everyone to start playing it, and I'm looking forward to seeing the speedruns, because there's a lot of awesome tech in this game. There's no concrete release date yet, so I'm guessing probably at some point next year.
It's one of those things of like unforeseen stuff and largely COVID that has suddenly just like ground a bunch of wheels to a halt. With a lot of stuff, it's complicated, and there's stuff that I can't really go into massively. But yeah, it's kind of as frustrating as it feels. I completely get it, because I'm in that same boat of like, when is this thing gonna actually happen? Been waiting for 10 years. When's it gonna happen?
Yeah. Well, whenever it comes out, I can't wait to play it. It's gonna be fantastic, and I hope for everyone watching is excited by what we've talked about and what they've seen on screen, because I've tried to you were very kind and gave me a very extensive beta, and I've tried to showcase a bunch of it so that people can really get a grasp of just how fun it is, because it is absolutely brilliant. I was like, again, going back to the little Easter eggs, there's so much throughout the game. There's I can't remember the name of the level, unfortunately. I'm very sorry. The graveyard. There's so many little things on the tombstones, which is brilliant. Loads of really subtle stuff.
Yeah, A Grave Mistake is the name of that level.
Yes,
it's a pun, of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really hope you're right. I hope people vibe with it.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, like, I wouldn't have started this series with interviewing you first in mind if I didn't want it to do well. I really want this game to sell.
Well, thank you for having me on and testing me as the first person. It's an honour.
Thank you for all the hard work you've put in over the years. Please do go follow Rob on Twitter. You can see updates of the game. Please do follow the link to Steam where you can wishlist it. And yeah, I guess we'll wrap this interview up. Have you got any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
Subscribe to Teal.
Thank you.
Don't think about it. Just do it.
Thank you. Yeah, click that bell.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, and there'll be a Patreon in the description, both mine and Rob, so you can actually get a version of the game right now if you follow his Patreon. What is it, $5?
Yeah, $5, and you get access to the same beta that you have.
Yes.
So it's pretty extensive.
Yeah. All except like end game stuff, pretty much.
Yeah, just massive spoilers avoided.
Yeah, which has a fun image. If you try.
I forgot about that.
I love that image. It's so great. But no, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and to play the game. And yeah, I truly hope that everything goes well when it releases. I'll certainly be doing a playthrough, and I'll be, promoting it when it comes out, because yeah, it deserves all the love. But thank you for watching, everyone. Take care. Bye.